Otherwise, let's get started. Good morning, everybody. All right. Thanks for coming in to join the talk on exam readiness. This is actually a good time to actually discuss this topic. I think it will actually put you in a good state as you move forward to prepare either for your O level or the coming A level. All right. So let's get started. The approach towards exam preparation has never changed since exam was instituted. Primarily, everybody starts by looking at the 10-year series or the school exam papers. I think that continue to be the main source and the main area you need to work on, because it is actually a good simulation for you to understand what are the areas that you need to encounter when you're sitting for the papers. And also I believe it's also critical for one to get familiarized with the exam format or the assessment format. So I think it is pretty important that when you think about actually exam prep, the first thing is that how does the exam look like? And I think that is primarily the first thing that you need to think about. So it's good to look at the past papers to have some ideas on questions that are asked in terms of formatting, and the type of questions that they do ask actually do change over time. Quite frankly, if you look at the exam papers that were previously in the early 2000s, the questions are a lot more straightforward, direct. They are actually more factual based. And somewhat I can say that by reading the answers in 10-year series or past papers, it gives you a good feel as to how you should answer the question. Nowadays, after 20 years, you see that the questions have actually morphed, they have changed. They are now testing based more on applications than direct regurgitation. So I think it's important that when you move towards your exam prep, you need to actually think about how to apply knowledge rather than to regurgitate them. You'll hear me talk about that a lot more as we move forward. Certainly, when you're actually doing the papers, it is important that you actually have some form of time practice, meaning to say that you need to actually time yourself. Why is it important to time? Because that gives you, again, an idea as to what is the rate that you are actually solving the questions. Neither can you be too slow, neither do you want it to be too fast, because you could be actually overlooking certain areas when you're solving the question. A good question that is always asked is that when you're doing the 10-year series and doing those questions, should you actually have your notes be kind of like parked next to you when you're doing it? Frankly speaking, it depends on how you use it. If the notes are primarily there to allow you to take a quick glance so that you kind of like, because you may not have fully memorized everything, then I think the notes actually fulfill quite a good role. What I really mean is that it means that before you do any papers, you should by and large have a lot of the facts already stored. All right? You should already accumulated a lot of the core knowledge that you need. Because the whole idea of doing the 10-year series or doing the school papers is to now exercise what you know. Meaning to say is that you're reading the questions, going back to the things that you remember, opening up the drawers, knowing whether could you be able to pull out the correct drawer, pull out the correct knowledge, and then to do the correct applications. So in short, if the notes are there to actually assist, not for full reliance, if you are actually reading the questions and then you have to go back to take a full look at the notes, and you have to look at examples, and from those examples, you'll be able to follow the steps, and then to do your 10-year series, I would have said that you're not quite ready yet. That is not really a correct rehearsal or a correct simulation. Meaning to say that you are still not quite ready for exam. And you need to recognize it, because it means that in terms of your core knowledge, you're not quite there yet. You don't really fully understand them and have fully assimilated it to be ready to do the 10-year series. But having said that, you still need to start somewhere. So typically, if let's say you haven't been really doing what I've been saying, you may find that the first paper, when you're doing your first 10-year series paper, it will be very much like what I described earlier. Your notes is part next to it. You're reading the questions, you're going back to the notes to scan through everything. So you're unable to actually have a time practice. But that is where you start. And hopefully over time, you're able to wane off and move more to the correct way that we described earlier, whereby the notes are merely used as a guide. The next part that the student likes to do is that when you're doing the 10-year series, they use the marking scheme as a guide. That part is okay in the initial first few papers. As time passes by, not only do you need to wane off the notes, reliance on the notes, you need to wane off the reliance on the marking scheme. Because if you constantly continue to do that, you will build what I call a clutch mentality. Meaning to say you're always relying on the marking scheme to help you to kickstart. I know many students who actually specifically doing maths paper, all right, or even physics, the more technical paper, even the humanities. They like to take a quick glance as to see where is the angle of the way that you need to approach the question, or where is actually the formula, or which is the core knowledge area. So you pick up from there, and then you apply, and then you can go ahead and merrily solve the question. That is not the right way. That is what I call the clutch mentality. And typically, when we look at the students' paper who actually rely on this method, it is very apparent because typically they can kind of like either leave it blank. That means they got a lot of blanks. Actually, they know what to, they somewhat know what to do. But because they don't have the marking scheme basically to help them, they have been so reliant on it. And therefore, because of that, they are not able to perform in the exam. So over-reliance on marking scheme and over-reliance on just reading marking scheme will lead to the situation whereby you go into exam hall, you take a look at the questions, you somewhat seem to know what to do, but you're unable to do them. And you need the impetus, you need the start state, you need the core ingredient for the start state, which you don't have. Because there's no marking scheme in the exam. You only have yourself. So if you're using the marking scheme again to help you to ease into the 10-year series, I hope after the second or the third mock paper, you need to wane it off. You cannot keep relying on them. And the last but not least is that if you're listening to music, doing social media at the same time, having a snack when you're doing it, the answer is a no-no. Please don't do that, because all these things are giving you comfort. They are not real simulations, all right, of what exam stress will do. So later you hear me talk about, anxiety performance, all right? Performance anxiety, I'm sorry. So later you hear me say that we're going to discuss on this, whereby you have students that actually go for an exam, they somewhat seem to know what to do, but in the exam hall, they can't do it. Because they've gotten used to the fact that they have other things that help them to put them into the mode. Actually, it's not what young people say, that you need something to help you to get into the vibe. I'm sorry, in the exam, you're not allowed to snack and go along, no music, etc. So whatever I described to you earlier is primarily what I think is the success criteria for one to do well in the exam or perform well in the exam. People who actually want to spend time reading solution, and I know why you want to read solution. You read solution because you have very short of time. You have only 1-2 weeks before your prelim coming up. You haven't really been doing your work. So you find that the quickest way is just to read solution. I will honestly tell you this, it works somewhat for O-level, but it's increasingly not working as well. As I explained, questions are now changing to application type. No questions are similar or identical anymore. You can't just memorize and regurgitate. So I need to tell you that if you are adopting the approach of reading solution, it will also come out to be pretty apparent. When the question has a twist, meaning to say the question looks very similar to past question, if there's a twist to it, you're not able to do it. And if they actually demands applications, you're also not able to do it. Because you are actually training yourself If you're reliant very heavily on reading solution, you're training yourself to catch a specific fish using a standard method. You're not trained by and large, all right, to be able to catch fishes, different type of fishes, which is what really exam is all about. So I would actually only things that is only useful for you to read solution after you have done the question. That means you already tried. You can't do it. So now you're reading the solution. Primarily, you're trying to read to learn what went wrong, and to emulate, all right? Read to challenge yourself as to why this is the method, and to evaluate why I'm not able, when I'm solving the question, why was I unable to approach it in that manner? The more you ask all those things, the more you unravel it, the better you get. So that's when reading solution helps. And finally, reading solution somewhat helps to reinforce memory. All right, so I think these are the areas that you can consider. If you are reading the solution, which means you should only read the solution after you have really attempted the questions. The general approach to preparing for exam, all right, or doing your TYS and all that, I will separate them into two methods, all right? Method one will be more tailored to technical subjects, more maths and science, POA, geography type, whereby a lot of applications are required. If you're able to do most of the TYS, and as you're progressing forward, I think these are the people who are doing well. You are doing it correctly, you're timing yourself, you're doing well. Then you can kind of like start to adopt an approach where you can start to skip. What I meant by that, you read the questions, you know what to do, you can skip. Because in all your past practices, you have been getting them correct. Because the whole idea of now doing TYS is to find out where you're weak at. Some of you were with me for some time. You probably hear me keep talking about the need to find out where you're weak at. Because the whole idea for technical subject is really working on your weakness on a daily basis. You keep pounding on it. Nobody will get back the things that you identify you're weak at. You keep pounding on it today, you will be able to deal with it. For those people who do the TYS, you find that quite a number of questions you don't know, you should be happy about it. Meaning to say, don't continue to go back and do another paper, because you already know those areas you're bad at it. So you need to do something about it. Option one, like we discussed earlier, look at how the notes, look at your textbook, look at examples, look at how to apply, look at how you can do it. Okay? And so you need to go topical then, because TYS is multi-topic. Option two, you come and talk to the tutor. Go for Q&A, if you need tuition help, let us know. Bottom line, if you identify something you don't know, don't be sad about it. Don't say that, hey, I got so many things I don't know. You should be happy. I should be happy that I got this thing I don't know, quickly go and find out. Because those are the things that are tested. And also build a habit that after you have actually prepared or you solve your questions, I have students that typically don't check the answer. So this is actually the final stage, what I call the finishing code to the pain that you have done. If you're already pretty good, you need to, when you have written your answer, you need to try and check 4 factors. I use the word code. You need to think about whether could you be careless. Arithmetically, you could make an error. Check on it, all right? Have you omitted data? We typically have students that cases, because now questions are moving more into application. Have you, because that the questions give you some info, but you have a regurgitate whatever I've memorized, I pre-prepared. So you totally didn't quite factor in what data or what circumstances they have given you. Then I think that will very likely impact in your ability to score as well as you possibly could. Or it could be a poorly worded answer. What I meant by that, you could have not considered how many marks was allocated to it. And typically, it's very clear in both GCE exam, if I cater for 3 marks, you don't tell me 2 things. You tell me 2 things, at best I give you 2 marks. Means you're short of what the examiner is looking for. Are there keywords that you'll be missing? And last but not least, it's actually excuse. Sometimes I think student doesn't know how to answer. Then they end up copying words from the question. And that cannot be the answer actually, because you cannot be taking whatever they tell you and then you put in answer and hope to get marks. That is as good as, to me, I think it's a waste of ink. You shouldn't be doing that. So typically when questions you really don't know, later you hear me identify, you need to think about the topic, think about the subtopic, think about actually what are the common areas that they're always asking. Okay, so let's take a look at the topics. Let's look at subjects rather. They are more humanities based, meaning to say that they're involving more writing, argumentation, concepts, and all that. Before you do these kind of topics, you must have the core facts with you. I mean, you can't invent your own history. You need, if you're doing literature, you need to know the characters. You need to know the profile of the characters. If you're doing business studies, there are marking scheme phrase. Like for example, if they talk about actually the need about marketing, there are actually phrases they're looking for. Whether you are actually approaching it right based on external demands. There are things that you need to know. So you cannot invent all that. Less the languages, I agree. Because when it comes to language, you probably have a bit more free play. All right? But I think that before you start doing any papers, you need the core knowledge. So the core knowledge will allow you or form the bedrock for you to make your argumentations, to actually be the key ingredients for your writing. When you do tenure series, there are two approaches now. Unlike very technical subjects, you may not need to structure your full answer. I have to put that with a caveat. If you have struggled with languages, you always have issue writing. That means, you know that your language are not that strong. Then I would recommend for you to do the full answer. So that when you are actually practicing your lit, practicing your history, you're in fact also practicing your English language. But if you're actually pretty good in your languages, you're like getting your B and all that, you think that you're pretty all right, you can just actually structure the answer. Draft the pointers out. That means you think about how you are going to structure your answer. How am I going to tackle this question? What are the core facts that you're going to put in? How are you going to make your argumentation? How are you supporting your pointers, and from your pointers, your sub-pointers? You could do that because that will allow you to polish up, to make your answer better. And it will also save you the time, allowing you more time to do more questions. I will always say that when it comes to humanities subject, it is actually very clearly a process that involves two stages. You think about your answers, you write the answers. You think about your answers, this time now, you think about your answers, you're not very sure, you can go and look at your notes. Pull out things from your notes. As you're doing that, you're memorizing in a different way. So I think that is the two approaches you need to adopt, all right, to move it forward, unlike the very technical subjects. And build a habit, this is critical, build a really important habit of ISO for humanities. Think about whether the point that you make, sometimes in a lot of comments by the humanities teacher, they will say that the student make a great point, but they don't elaborate on it. If you don't beat that point to death, all right, you don't take the point, if you take a very reductionist approach, whereby I just said the point and then let the examiner figure it out, then that is no good, all right? That is not a strong argumentation. That is not a strong point, which means the examiner cannot give you full marks for that. So typically, that is one thing, incomplete point. Great pointers, no elaboration, no effort to try and pound it to death. Next, it's actually short point. Basically, you only have a couple of pointers. That primarily means that you may not know your core knowledge as well. That is when you need to go back, read, memorize, whether are there things that I need to remember. Finally, which is actually also the most important, don't be out of point. Don't write something that's totally out of point. That is actually something a no-no, because you'll be spending so much time writing on it, thinking you get the marks, but you don't. And that is actually precious waste of your time, the limited time that you have in the exam. Okay? So based on this itself, we now talk about common pitfalls. I think primarily the next couple of slides for us will be now thinking about, you already got this kind of like, I think I described to you the two techniques that you ought to be using for the various subjects. And I don't think a lot of us move away from those things. It's about how disciplined are you in doing it. So like I said, you could be doing science, but I have my marking scheme with me. I'm always depending on it. And that's bad. Don't do it. You got to weigh it off. You got to be disciplined in the approach. So same like we discussed in the humanities. Some students say that I just read only. I don't need to practice question 1. Because I read, I got very good memory. That is wrong as well. Because when you're reading, you're using a different faculty of your brain. You need to practice question. You need to do 10-year series. Remember the original statement that we made? 10-year series for you to familiarize with it. So some people adopt the approach that I just know the corrector very well. I take my lead paper, I go inside there, I write whatever I want to write. That is not a concoction for success. A success means that actually you plan, you premeditate, you meditate on it, you do it, you keep doing it, you read, and you evaluate, and that's how you do well, for example. So I wanted to say that whatever we tell you earlier, you have to do it. Okay? So those are the basic ingredients. This next couple of slides, we are now talking about accidents. You have made your preparation very good. You go into the exam hall. Some of you naturally will feel fearful of exam because it's an important thing. Come on, I'll honestly tell you this. You can put anybody on an exam. All right? I think no matter how old you are and all that, nobody likes it. Nobody is fully adequately prepared for it. Everybody has performance anxiety. You tend not to do as well. But what can we do now? What can we do to make sure we mitigate it? So I'm going to go through the 5 most common mistakes that people make. All right? And when we talk to them over the years, as I talk to the students, as I actually discuss with the learners, as we review the exam paper together, these 5 are the most common. Number 1, the perfect thinker. Everybody go into exam knowing that, hey, this is my only shot. Very important. Let me keep aiming. I always put it this way. You cannot spend so much time aiming, controlling your breathing and all that. The target run away. You know your 20 targets. I only got time to shoot 5. Obviously, you fail the exam. And in fact, nowadays, the examiner knows that. So I've seen questions that they set inside that will take you a long time to do it. Students who are not very good in their concept will take a long time. And that's how they sink them. That's how they make them don't do well. Because students and people who are sitting for exam are getting better and better. I cannot have everybody get A, isn't it? So I got to make obstacles to make sure that they don't do as well. So one of the ways they set question is to make it that students who are not very clear, they spend a lot of time, a lot of working, then you're dead. So don't be a perfect thinker. Don't overthink. You draft your answers, more or less it's there. You can think about it, go ahead and write it. And there are some students who actually, they by and large remember everything, but they can't recall 1 or 2 facts. Then you know what they do? They sit down there and keep thinking about it. Or they say, I don't write first. I go and do something first. Then come back, I write again. You all need to know that there's something called momentum in the exam. You roughly draft your pointers. You already have that in your head. You put it aside, you go and take another questions. You got to draft another thing. All those earlier versions that you drafted in the earlier question, it's no longer map out. So later when you go back, it will take longer time. So what I'm trying to tell you in short, don't be a perfect thinker. There need to be a stark balance. I'm not asking you to draft a couple of lousy pointers and straight away go and write. No, that's not what we're talking about. We are just telling you to overthink about it. If you know that the pointer that you write, hey, it's pretty good already, you can pass the question already, I think you should write. And then what do? When you write it, I have a couple of students who are actually pretty good at that. They write and then they leave blanks. They pack the pointers because they know later I'm going to come back and maybe I'll write a couple more. So you need to, over time, develop this technique. This is actually a suggestion that I have for you. You develop your own technique to survive, to do well. Okay? But don't overthink. Okay? Because you overthink, you will have poor time management. I will tell you this, all of us will want to survive and do well in the exam. Nobody wants to go into the exam and mess up your time. Nobody wants to do that. And the main bulk of the students who actually does that, overthink. They keep shopping. It's like going to a shopping mall. They look at question A, they say, hey, maybe I don't start with this. I look at question B, hey, I don't start with this. I look at question C, I don't start with this. You basically wasted time shopping for 3 questions. Then you go back and tell which question you want to start. Later I'll talk more about that, but that's not what you need to do. Whatever, if you're thinking about doing, if this is what you have done, you're dead. You're not going there for shopping. You're going there, if I can put it this way, it's like you should think about yourself. It's like Master Chef. Going there 10 minutes, people want you to cook out something for them. All right. Next part, there are black hole questions. I really tell you, examiner know what you all are thinking. How we prepare you for exam. I cannot set a paper, everybody get A. There will be questions that cannot be done. There will be parts of questions that cannot be done. I wouldn't say cannot be done, but you're going to take a long time to do it. There are twists inside there. There are a couple of hoops that you need to jump. Don't get sucked in by there. But I have to tell you, nowadays they're quite good at setting questions with a slight twist. Then you look at the question and think that it's very similar to last year one. But actually it's not. You got sucked into it, you go and write it, you go and do everything about it, then you think about that, hey, maybe there's a twist. I mean, that's also partially what I tell you earlier. After you do the question, you have to go back and check, right? You think about, remember the code that I tell you? You think about the ISO that I tell you? After you read, you overthink now. You go back to your overthink because now you write already, you think that, hey, maybe cannot. I omitted some data. This is the type of questions you need to recognize. So reading the questions becomes so important. I'm telling you that a lot of the students sometimes overread the question. What I mean by overread, you read the question thinking that it's asking you something more difficult than what it is. You misread the question because you thought that they are going to ask you that thing, that similar thing that you always see, but actually they're not. So I'm telling you, take the time to read the question. Reading the question is like evaluating a what? An obstacle ahead of you. You got to physically tell yourself that, hey, this is actually a hole that I can easily jump. Or maybe I'm sorry, this is a river. I need to really swim. Maybe I cannot get over to the other side. You need to think about it. Always, as I said, this one I will tell you this, later you hear me say, always do the first question where you're the most confident. Because that's where you launch your boat. You don't want to launch and then you fall. Remember what I discussed. That's why I keep always telling people you need to know your strength. If the first thing I ask a student after a couple of months or when we review in the prelim, I ask you what is your strength. You say, I don't know. I'm telling you, you are a very dangerous explorer in the exam. You're like an explorer in the exam. I don't know whether you turn it. When you sit for exam, you turn out well or not. You need to know what you're strong at. It is a very simple concept. It is anything that anybody will do. It's an exam. It's not a game. It's very important for you. You do whatever you do best first. Gain the confidence, gain the momentum. Remember what we discussed. Finally, the blackout questions. When do you think you have blackout questions? You have blackout questions because I said earlier, you need to know where your strength is. So there's preliminary, for example, a couple of topics, a handful of topics. I give an example, inequality. Or maybe the case of A-level students, differentiation. That's a topic I'm fantastic at it. I always do the question first because I advise you to do it. You go into the exam, you see the question, you don't know how to do. You panic, isn't it? So blackout questions is different from black hole. Blackout question means questions that you normally know one. You normally think that you're pretty chanted, pretty good at it. Then you find that you cannot do. That's where you get blackout because you lose confidence. So that's the reason why I always tell people, when you select the first question, it is extremely important. All right? And it's always about the truth. Recognize that, hey, maybe this question has a twist in it. Let it go. Don't let it affect your confidence. Confidence is premium. It's important. It's essential for exam. All right? And blackout questions typically means that first question, you're very confident you're supposed to do, you don't know. You say, okay. You go to the second question, you get hantam again. You cannot do it. That is when you actually have a possibility for blackout. I have no solution for you for blackout. It is actually about calming your nerve. I mean, if you have any religion, you make a prayer if you have a blackout. You take a drink, you calm yourself down, you start again. You have to do that. All right? Okay? And blackout will happen even for some of us whereby we're caught in situation they're not prepared to. Okay? So basically, when you sit for exam, remember there are two factors at play that are actually meddling with your emotion. Exam is not just really about the brain. Some people say it's about the brain and then I control myself, I write. Oh, that's it. No. It's affected by your emotion. The very moment fear sits in, you know that you panic. You know it's blackout moment. Remember what you discussed. You need to calm yourself down first. Don't go and quickly go and do another question. You may have to take a couple of minutes just to take some deep breath. You have your own ways. You got to find your own ways to do it. I have no prefix solution. But basically, if you know that fear seeks in, you got to kick fear out. If fear is there, you go any questions, you're going to mess it up. Whether you know or you don't know, the very moment your amygdala is actually the part of your brain itself got in high gear, there's no way you can get yourself out from it. All right? Calm yourself down first before you kick off. The other one is that for people who says that, no, whatever problem that Tony is talking about, it don't sit with me. I always quite confident. All right? Good. But don't let pride sit in. Some people who think the paper is easy, they think that I have it in the pocket, they still mess it up. Why? Because it could potentially because the paper is easy, and everybody else is doing pretty well. So potentially when they do the marking scheme, I can set an easy paper, but my marking scheme is very tight. I insist you need to write these two things before I give more marks, instead of one thing. Then I'm telling you, your pride will lead you to fail. Okay? So if the paper is easy, you're feeling pretty good about it, you better be careful. I've seen students who are very prideful. They think that I have it in the pocket. I have it. I'm not going to let this down. And you find that when the result comes out, you will find that, they make careless mistakes because they don't check, because they think they're pretty good, they're overconfident, and that's where you pay a price for it. So I need to say that both are at play. You have to be careful of the pitfalls. Finally, it is fundamentally about rehearsal. The next slide will be on rehearsal. This slide, why is it there? I mean, quite frankly, if you want success and approval, you want to do well for exam, you must be prepared to trade off your comfort and control. Because taking exam is about you losing comfort and you losing control. I think it's fair, right? You think about it. Who wants to take exam? Sit inside a place whereby you're going to place under the microscope. Whatever you write, people are going to check. Nobody loves that. But on the contrary, nowadays, in our daily lifetime, in this modern era in Singapore, everybody is emphasizing on comfort and control. I want my freedom. I want my control. Quite frankly, that's antithesis of exam. That doesn't put you well for exam. In exam, you're supposed to be uncomfortable. You're supposed to have no control because people are going to throw things at you and not only just throw things at you, they will throw the kitchen sink at you, hoping you sink. So you need to get out of the comfort zone. It is about rehearsal. It's about self-discipline. It's really about self-discipline, really. How disciplined are you in actually doing the simulation, in doing the rehearsal? So when I'm doing the rehearsal, I'm starting, no, I want some comfort. I want to enjoy myself, aircon, whatever not. I'm telling you that that's not the way. Bottom line, you need to simulate, you need to rehearse as for what is real. As close as you can be. And constantly be very frank about it. All right, where's my strength? Where's my weakness? Exam, in the words of one of my students, all right, not me. He told me and he did very well, all right? Very exam smart guy. He says exam is about showing my strength and hiding my weakness. And I can't agree more. Whatever I don't know, I want to hide. So if the questions comes out, I find ways, to squeeze a couple of words, their motherhood, and hopefully I get some marks. And I'm not going to spend time on them. Spending all the time on questions that I know to make sure I get all those to be 100% correct. So that comes to the next part. That is actually, when you're going inside an exam hall, like I said, look at the question, categorized into 3 categories. Cat 1 is the low-hanging fruit. In the words of my student, those are the ones that I want to make sure I get full marks. And that should be the approach. Because those are the ones that you know. Then after that, he will invest all the rest of his time, whereby they are the top 2 questions, which is that you need to jump, you need to get a little bit uncomfortable, you need to think a little bit, hey, based on all the experience, and like I said, if you do too many TYS, a lot of school papers and all that, at some point of time, you will start to see a trend. They're always setting the same trick. They tell you this because they want you to use it. They tell you this because it's an anomaly. It's not the traditional way that you apply. They tell you this in the hope that you'll use it in your answer. But they're hoping that some students don't pick it up. So I'm telling you, those are the category 2 questions. They kind of like know it. You roughly know how to start. You know what topic they are, but you don't fully understand it. You analyze a bit. You need to jump and try to think about what are the examiners looking for. And they are really the cat 3 questions. And as you're doing a lot of simulations and rehearsal, hopefully as time passes by, your cat 3 questions will start to cut down in number as you have more cat 1 questions. It's perfectly fine, as I said, when you start off the 10-year series. If you're very raw on this, you're starting it. A lot of the questions will fall into Cat 2 and Cat 3. You have very few. But as I always tell everybody, trust yourself, trust the hard work that you're prepared to plow and put in. You will find that over time, especially after the first, second paper, things will definitely get better because you will start to see a trend for yourself. Like for physics question, if they ask Newton first law, second law, third law, then the next couple of paper, there will still be one question on it. Every year, year after year, there's one question. There's always one question on principle or moment. Things will never change. After you get hit a couple of times, you will definitely get better. Okay? So finally, this is my last couple of slides. It is really about building the learning momentum. So when you're doing the 10-year series for the first few paper, I say, it's about the momentum. It's about self-discipline. It's about the truth. So this is a stage, don't know, go and talk to teachers. Don't know, go and read your notes. Talk to teachers is the best. Because we know exactly what you don't know. We know what's important for exam. We can help you to accelerate your learning. I've seen students who accelerate their learning from July onwards. It's still in time for the O-level and the A-level. But I have to tell you this, normally once I go into September, I will be super encouraging. I will be less truthful. I hope you understand why. Normally from September to November, there is actually less progress. Still possible, but less. Okay? It's always, must always remember, it's always about the marking scheme. Never about you. It's always writing about what the examiner wants. Please, no regurgitation. Students who memorize lock, stock, barrel, go inside there and regurgitate. I am sorry, those days are over. In the 2000s, it works. In the 2010s, it somewhat worked. In the 2020s, it no longer works. All right? So for biology, some people say, I memorize everything, I go inside. I'm sorry, they no longer ask that. They don't ask you standard question anymore. There's actually an application inside. Your answer must therefore be tailored to actually answering the question. If you just mere regurgitate, you can still potentially fail the question despite giving all the correct facts because you never put it in context. So finally, the final point is about exam rehearsal. The more you're truthful, the more you humble yourself and understand marking scheme. Don't go and argue about marking scheme. It's what examiner want, not what you want. Okay? More you understand what examiner want, the better you're going to score. The fewer words you write, the higher points you get. And actually, that's what you want, isn't it? And I want to remind everybody, it's not MCQ. Sorry. Yeah, it's not MCQ and it's not a survey form. You don't have to fill up everything. It is always about writing what examiner wants. The more you rehearse, the more precise you get, the better results you will get. Finally, remember this. For any exam, always prepare the structured paper first. If they have the MCQ paper, prepare it later. You will always see in all exams, MCQ paper is always the last paper, never the first. Okay? So you can, some students enjoy doing MCQ, so they do MCQ first. I advise otherwise. The thing that will kill people is always the structure. And normally, as you improve your structure, your MCQ will go up. If your structured result don't improve, your MCQ can still be quite good. Okay? So always prepare from the structured question, not the paper one and all that, which are typically MCQ. Finally, this is always the last question I get. People will ask me days before exam, what do I do? I definitely don't advocate you doing any questions. You need to build up the eagerness for you to do questions, for you to pour things out. You memorize core knowledge. The best is to be able to identify a list that which are the areas you always forget. You always rely on the notes to remember. When you're doing 10-year series, you always go back and to refer. So you go back and memorize those things that you typically cannot. Number 2, familiarize on method and duplication. That is when it's possible for you to do some topical. And in this case, review study questions, study solution. This is fine. All right? And obviously, I want to put a caveat that students will never, do enough work. And just before the day before exam, they'll be doing this. Then when they go to the exam hall, they may not be able to do it because they never practice. Okay? It's probably more prevalent in technical subject. Humanities can still get away with putting a bit of, memory work to try and regurgitate some of the key phrases and all that. So yeah, so that's my view on that. Also review papers that you make mistakes. So all the mid-year, all the term assessment that we have, I hope you didn't throw away the paper. Some people say I did very badly, throw away, I don't want to see. That's again not the approach. The approach is for you to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes twice. And in fact, a lot of those areas that we've tested you are likely areas that we identified to be important for this year. So go back and look at it. Don't make the same mistake twice. If you make the same mistake twice, it's no good. Okay? Consolidate. I always use the word at this stage, you consolidate. Consolidate those questions that you know. Don't be complacent. Don't be overconfident. Make sure those that you know, you're going to get the ball across the line. Make sure you get all the marks. Clear the entire chessboard. All the Cat 1 questions, try to strive to make sure you score 100%. And areas that you kind of like really not too good at, fine. All right? Read solutions or whatever. That's what you do at this stage. Because that's really the day before the battle. There's very little you can do. And if you really find things that are really kind of like disturbing you, you really find something, you got some panic, don't panic. Either talk to the tutor, talk to a friend, or if not, be very clear. This topic, if it come out, I'm sorry, it's in the Cat 3 question, I am not doing it. I just memorize a couple of key phrases, I see whether I can write them. That's about it. Don't lose sleep over this. If you just don't do some Cat 3 categories of questions, not supposed to fail an exam if you have done enough preparation. Okay? So with that, this is the acronym. This is the final slide I typically left it up with. All right? Remember what we have discussed today. All right? Starting with the acronym from SmartLab. It's about your strength and weakness. It's about the method of preparing for assessment. Remember, you always do first. Okay? Always have to do. All right? And read only with those caveats that we have discussed this morning. Always do assessment simulation. Very important. Make sure you time it. Make sure you read and understand the question. A lot of students actually fail because they don't understand what is asked and they rush to answer it. Okay? Or when they read the question, they omit some data that is provided. Make sure you devote your time and energy into the correct place. You have limited energy during preparation. Pound it on those things that you identify to be weak. You have limited time when you go for exam. Place it into your questions that you know very well. Topics of strength. All right? Typically, people fail because of the 3 factors, the LAB. 1, they do not need enough simulations. Lack of simulations. All right? They do not understand marking scheme because they don't look at the assessment scheme. They don't study in depth. They don't know the key phrases. They don't know what are the things that's always asked. They did not know the need to elaborate certain points. Last but not least, they are not aware of black hole and blackout questions. All right? If you go into those circumstances, make sure you pull yourself out from it and walk away from it. All right? Okay, if not, I end the brief smack on about 40 minutes. I'll be happy to take any questions. Yeah, so if there's any questions, the floor is yours. You can speak directly, or otherwise, you could actually write in the chat. I'll be able to see it and answer you. Okay, the floor is you guys. Any questions actually? Okay, if no questions, thank you very much. The talk ends here. Those people who subsequently will still send out the link to everyone. And those people with any questions, you can still approach me. All right? If not, thanks a lot for coming in this morning. All right, thank you. Bye.